Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Jennifer Halliburton with the Awakened Jenn Tarot. I'm a Soulful Revolution certified tarot reader, spiritual advisor, and healing and manifestation coach. And today we're going to be talking about my spiritual awakening experience. So this is a little bit different content than what I typically do on my channel, but I have been trying to add in some different series that are more informational and they can help you to grow on your spiritual path. And so one of the series that I've started is the spiritual awakening series. And so my last video was the 5 life-changing stages of spiritual awakening, and it was helping you figure out which stage you might be in. And so this video is just going to be a continuation of that series, and it's going to be just me sharing my personal spiritual awakening experience. But I've also been doing some guided meditations too. And so my latest guided meditation is the Soul Retrieval, a guided journey to reclaim your inner voice and inner peace. And so this is for those people who have the wounding of feeling unheard. So this is going to go back into those deep parts of your subconscious, and it's going to retrieve that part of your soul and reintegrate it back into your life. I've also done the Embracing Guidance, a guided journey to connect you with your spirit guides, and the Abundance Activation, which is a guided journey to financial freedom. So all of these are free. I'm trying to create a library of resources for you just to help you again on your spiritual path. All right, so let's see. Just get back here. All right, so like I said, today the plan is really just to talk about my spiritual awakening experience. And I've mentioned it in parts and pieces here and there, but I've never put the full story out down on paper or in video or in words. I just really haven't done it. I've told it 1,000 times, I feel like, to all the people around me, but I've never fully sit down and documented it, I guess, is what I'm looking at. All right, so I think before I can get too far into my actual spiritual awakening experience, I want you to understand who I was before the awakening, because I think the biggest fear that I have about doing this video, but also another reason why I'm doing the video, is for those people who knew me in that stage of my life. Because I know that this has been incredibly confusing for everyone to sit back and watch on the outside if you haven't had a firsthand experience yourself of what a spiritual awakening is and how much it can really transform a person's whole mentality and just everything else about their life. And I mean, I think that that's going to be the clearest example to show you how your thoughts really do create your reality, of just how it shifted so much once my thoughts shifted after the spiritual awakening. So before the spiritual awakening, who was I? I was a stay-at-home mom of 4 kids. I was a homeschooling mom. That, all I did, that was my life. My kids were my life. I was a wife and mom. And my main identity was based in Christianity. And so I was that person who was at the church nearly every time the doors were open. I volunteered on so many different, committees and boards at the church. I wanted to just serve and be a part of what God was doing. And I just felt such a strong connection to God my whole life. And, I wasn't turned to Christianity because it was forced on me, like from my childhood. It was something I chose for myself. I mean, it was like I always felt a strong connection to God and Jesus, and it just felt natural to just go that path. But even in my church experiences, I was never quite like everybody else. And I don't know the best way to say it. I mean, it's just, I always felt like there was always more, and I wanted anything that God had available to me. And so I never got fully attached to any true denomination. I didn't understand really what the purpose of all of that was. It felt like they were fighting the wrong side. Like, why are we fighting each other? So I never understood like the separation between even the churches. So I was very open to just kind of seeing what was out there and, what actually felt most aligned with me. And so for a long time, I went to a Pentecostal church, and that felt the most aligned with me because it felt like I could be just fully myself, in expressing, my devotion to God and my connection to God. And I really did feel a very strong connection to God, just always. So, and, through that church, I would do things, I had the gift of speaking in tongues, and it came on me spontaneously. And I do have even videos from a long time ago of when I did that, and I could still probably do it like right now. But like I understood that there were still even different churches that condemned that behavior, even though like this church is saying, no, this is biblical. This is one of the spiritual gifts. Even other churches were denying that it was an actual spiritual gift. So it was very confusing to me because, like I said, when that gift came on, I wasn't trying. I was laying in bed praying, and it just happened spontaneously. Just, and I didn't know. I didn't even know like what to think. It just happened. And so then to have, to go to other churches and to have them tell me that, no, that's not real. And no, that's not spiritual, or you can't do that. Like, it was very confusing because it wasn't like it was something I was trying to do. It just happened to me. And other things, like I would always just kind of have knowings. And I understand this now as claircognizance, but I didn't have the vocabulary because in all of my, experience, this was taboo to even say anything of the sort of like that you might have psychic abilities. That's taboo, and you were not supposed to speak of that. So I always felt it in a different way. I never called it that, but I was still experiencing those things. So I would just get inner knowings, just that claircognizance. I didn't know that word, but that's what was happening to me. I would just kind of know things. I would see signs and synchronicities. I didn't call them that. I didn't understand that that's what that was. I called them God winks. I just knew that that's a message from God. I don't understand like how this is happening, but that's a message from God. I have never believed in coincidence. So that's just from as long as I can remember. I have never believed in coincidence. There's always a connection. And then my prayer life was just very, very, very active too. And so like there was a point that I would be up at 3 a.m., every day. And I would go to my bathroom and I would have this whole like quiet time because it was the only space, that was kind of peaceful still and not to wake anyone else up. And I would have like this journal that had all these questions on my heart laid out that I was praying about. And I would go into this place, and I would keep the lights off, and I would only have just a few like candles just to keep everything just in that like peaceful state. And I would listen to Christian music and worship music. And I would get myself into this high vibration state that I didn't understand that that's what I was doing, but I was getting myself kind of in this space of just worshiping God, being in his presence, just feeling the love and expansion in that way. And then I would go into, praying and then praying in tongues, and then I would go silent. And when I went silent, I would just sit and I would wait for whatever messages started coming through to me. And I would just start writing as fast as I could, that I would get these messages coming in. These answers to my very specific prayers were coming out. Sometimes I would get, visions that would show up in front of me, and I would just write the vision down that I was seeing, everything that I was seeing. Sometimes I would hear the words, or I would just have the words would just flow from the pen, and I couldn't quite understand how it was happening, but it was happening. And again, I wasn't calling any of this like psychic things. This is just from God. God gave me a message. God gave me like this message. That's all I was saying, is God was giving me the message. So I have this whole journal of these messages directly from God about all of these different things that I was praying about. And and I see it now. I'm like, okay, well, so I was already doing this stuff, and I didn't even understand that that's what I was doing because I wasn't taught. I wasn't taught how to develop those skills, but that was just me. Naturally, this is what feels right. And I'm trying to think what else. Okay, so also for my church, I led the prayer ministry. And as part of that, I decided that I wanted to do monthly encouragement messages. Because I'll tell you that one of my big goals in life early on was to read the Bible cover to cover. And I've done that multiple times at this point, but I remember the first time going through it, when it got to the part where it was talking about spiritual gifts, and I saw that listed in the spiritual gifts was the gift of encouragement. Like, that one shook me to my core, because I didn't expect something as simple as just encouragement could be a literal spiritual gift that was given to you to share with others. And so, like, I realized, a long time ago, I had this gift of encouragement. And so as part of the prayer ministry, I wanted to be able to share that encouragement. So I did these monthly encouragement messages, and every month I would get in front of the computer and have no idea what we were going to talk about, just none. And so I would just sit and wait. I would pray and like, okay, what do we need to talk about now? And it would be like a Bible verse would hit me, and then all of a sudden the whole message was just there, and I would just type as fast as I could. And I mean, I'd get this whole message out, and when it was done, I would know for fact that was not mine. I would know those words were not mine. I don't know how that happened. It was just like it just channeled right through me. And so I was even in that space channeling and not even realizing the connection that I had, either. And whenever I would send these messages out, and a lot of times these messages were answers to things I were praying about, that I was personally praying about, things that were specific to my life. But when I would send this message out to the whole church, inevitably I would get people responding like, oh my gosh, I needed this message today. You have no idea. It was like you were looking right into my, story, like you knew my story. And so that's when I started seeing how very connected we all were, because I was telling my story, but yet it connected with all of these other people who we all have these similar, life stories that we're going through. And so I'm sharing all of this to let you know that the shift wasn't as big as a lot of people really think that it is. Like, I think on the outside it looks way bigger, but I'm telling you, I wasn't so different. Even though I was fully, involved in the church and Christianity was my full identity, look at everything I was still doing that was all of this extra spiritual stuff that I was doing that the church would actually condemn if you use different language. And so I'm just sharing, like I said, that part so that you can understand who I was coming into an awakening, that it wasn't just kind of a random person out there that just like, I'm just walking the streets, I never heard of God or anything, and it just bam, I have this awakening. I was already on a spiritual path. I already had this full devotion to God, and I was seeking to grow and expand. I was already doing spiritual practices that were helping to increase my vibration, that I didn't even realize that that's really what was happening. So there was an alignment already to that was like almost like you could almost see an inevitability once you put all of the pieces together. All right, so moving on. So still not the full awakening, but in early 2014, this was my first indication that this awakening was going to be happening. So in early 2014, I was woken up in the middle of the night with a message, just a deep knowing that God was about to do something really big in my life, life-changing. And the thing is, I wasn't told what it was. I was just told it's going to happen and it's going to be good. And the other piece of information that was given to me was the number 40. The number 40 was being impressed upon me. And I understood it to connect that when that this thing was going to happen around the time that I was 40. And so at 2014, I was 34. So, we were still a ways away. I wasn't going to turn 40 until 2020. So, and we all kind of know about 2020. But I was given this sort of like a premonition to, like that was the time frame. I knew that in 2014 that's the time frame that we're kind of looking at. And I understood also that the 40 meant time of preparation, because that's how it was used in the Bible, time of preparation. And so I did get that I'm being prepared for something big. And it shook me so much that I woke up my husband and I was like, oh, God's about to do something big in our lives. And he's just looking at me like I'm crazy, because that's, like he was kind of used to me being kind of weird, but he's like, oh, okay, what? And, like, I don't know. But it's gonna be good, and it's gonna happen, around the time I'm 40. And so, like, I'm just rolling all this stuff out. The thing is, it wasn't actually probably his message. So it wasn't his message, because the way that his life changed, I doubt he sees it in the same way that I'm seeing it, for sure. So honestly, that year we were in a pretty good place. Our marriage had been kind of up and down, but that year we were actually in a pretty good place. I was feeling really good about just where my life was at. I was very content. I was living in my literal dream house. I was getting to do what was my dream job of being, a stay-at-home mom. I was getting to homeschool, which was a dream come true as well. I had so much going right. I was very happy with a lot that was happening in my life at that time. And so I wasn't expecting big changes that were very quickly on my path. And so in November of that year, I started going through anxiety really bad that year. Not exactly sure why, but I was taking medicines, and it led to just all of this other path. And in November of that year, the thing happened that ended my marriage. My marriage did not end that year, but it did. I mean, it ended in that moment. Like, the marriage that I had ended in that moment. And, I stayed for 3 more years, but the marriage that I had ended in that moment. And I was not prepared for that. And, the thing that happened, it triggered something from my past that I had just been running from, that I didn't want to face. But now I was faced head on with it. And like, I was in such distress by this event that, I mean, like, I knew I was not okay. I wanted to just go jump off a bridge. I mean, it was just like, my life was just, I didn't know how I was going to manage. I did not know how I was going to manage, like, what I was being faced with, face to look at, face to confront, face to heal. And so I called instantly to get in with a therapist, because I knew I was not okay. And my stress level, I mean, just like I said, that, I mean, I was just ready. Like, I wasn't okay. And so I know I had just all of these like stress hormones just flooding my body. So much so that I feel like that it was a critical piece of what happened just 3 months later. And so I see all of these things as just kind of conspiring together to get me where I'm supposed to be, even though they weren't good experiences. These were actually very traumatic experiences for me. So 3 months later, I have a massive bilateral pulmonary embolism. And I didn't even know what that was until then. But if you don't know what a pulmonary embolism is, it's blood clots in the lungs. And mine caused me to completely stop breathing for an unknown amount of time. And I did have a near-death experience, but I didn't understand it fully then, in that moment. Like, I can tell you about it now. I had to put so many pieces together years later. All the processing took years from that point. But because I had no idea what had happened to me, that night. I knew I stopped breathing, but I didn't know the seriousness of it. I knew I had the other experience, but didn't fully understand like all that really had happened to me that night. My brain was just blocking out a whole lot. I think just because it was just too overwhelming to really consider everything, that I was being faced with. So the pulmonary embolism, since it caused me to stop breathing, it also led to hypoxic brain injury. And the brain injury happened right near my pineal gland. And if you know what the pineal gland is, that is your source of spirituality. And, we talk about it being closed off by all the foods and the environment and everything, the way that we live. We can close off our pineal gland, which is closing us off to our spirituality. But when it busts wide open, this is also what causes the spiritual awakening. And so I, again, do not feel that any of this was by accident, because that thing, the event that happened to me that caused me to stop breathing, caused the damage right next to my pineal gland. And so I know that it was impacted. I know that there was something about that. And then another thing that I found out later that was connected to the embolism experience is the day before the embolism was a total solar eclipse. I didn't know that. And if you understand astrology, eclipses are fated, destined moments. And so I was looking at my birth chart with my astrology friend, Dawn. And, we looked at that day. We went back to that day because I was telling her, this part of my story. And she went back to that day, and we just saw how the astrology played out on my chart on that day. And you could see it. You could literally see that my health was going to be impacted in a serious way, in an unexpected and very serious way. And the way that, she helped explain it to me, and the way that you can look at any of these birth charts is looking at the person. Their vibration level is going to tell you kind of how it's going to impact them. So if you see something scary in somebody's chart, or you see something scary in your chart, you also have to think what vibration you're at, because it's going to take on a higher octave. And so the higher octave of that was that I went through a miraculous moment. I did have my health, was severely impacted, but I went through a miraculous moment, a moment that was literally supposed to kill me. I have not heard anyone else share a similar pulmonary embolism experience as mine, other than people who were telling the story of someone that died. And so, that's something I, really do take in a lot, is I knew so quickly I have some sort of purpose, because I should not have survived that. So, that was just one of the big things that led me, to this path. But this was also the thing that happened with my husband. And this was also what was leading me into my own dark night of the soul. Because, I was already struggling with the situation that had happened with my husband. I didn't know what I needed to do. I didn't want to throw away my beautiful life, that I had worked really hard to create. But I didn't know how to keep living either. And this false reality that it's not what I thought it was. It's not ever going to be what I had thought it was anymore. So, I'm going through all of these, processes of just like, just it, like I said, this was my dark night. This is just, my rock bottom moment of realizing, like, wow, life is no fun. And, I went further down after the embolism just because it impacted my health so bad, that I was the person who was usually out helping others, and now I was the one who needed so much help. And that was really a hard place for me to be. And I got very down and discouraged and depressed, and just I was barely living. I was surviving at that point. I was barely living. And I just kept going and kept going. and just, accepting my lot. This is just how life, this is just how it's going to be. I'm not going to have, fulfillment in love. I'm not going to, have health. I'm not going to, like, all of the, I've just accepted my life. This is how it is. But yet there was also a part of me that couldn't accept it. Like there was like the duality inside of myself that I'm saying I'm accepting it, but I'm also knowing I'm not able to actually accept it. And in February of 2018, I was sitting in a doctor's office with my husband, and that doctor told me that he could not help me until I finally got over my depression and anxiety. And I just started sobbing because I knew what I had to do in order to get out of it. And that was like the scariest thing in the world to me. I had to leave the marriage. I knew that was my only choice. If he's telling me literally, you have no hope, but there's nothing I can do until you get yourself out of this space, then I'm completely hopeless, or I have to do something. And through this time frame, I should add that my dad was very sick with lung cancer. And, I was trying to deal with that. But I knew that day, that's the day I made the decision. I am going to have to end this marriage. I am going to have to leave. Because here I am sobbing in that doctor's office. Neither the doctor nor my husband looked at me, consoled me, asked me if I was okay. They just talked about sports as I was having a complete just come apart. So I knew. And I told him, I got to get through this thing with my dad, and then I'm going to do this. And so my dad died in March of 2018. I filed for divorce in April of 2018. And that started me on a whole different path that I wasn't quite ready for, but here I am. And so I went from being a stay-at-home mom, homeschooling mom, to now I have to get a job. And so I was able to get a work-from-home job from my brother-in-law, but it got complicated because of the divorce. And so I ended up needing to find another job, and I went on all of these different interviews. I was putting applications in everywhere, and nobody would even give me a chance because there was such a gap in my resume because I was a stay-at-home mom. And I really didn't know what I was going to do. And as part of the divorce settlement, I was getting the retirement fund payout. And so I decided I was going to take that money and invest it into something that, for my future in some way. And an opportunity did come up. I'm still trying to decide if it was great or not for me, but it happened. That I opened up a barbershop. I partnered with someone in 2019 to open up a barbershop, even though I had no haircutting experience. I had never, gone to beauty school or cut hair. It wasn't even a passion of mine. It was the passion of the person who I was partnering with. But it was a good idea because, when they suggested it to me, they just said, hey, do you want to open a barbershop? I'm like, absolutely. If you had said hair salon, no. But the barbershop was the thing that I knew was the thing that was needed. And so I jumped. I just jumped with no experience. And I didn't really have any other options either, but I jumped and I just went full in. Just let's see where this goes. And it didn't go in great places. It took me down a lot of hard lessons and paths. I had to really just step into my power big time, to go through that, because we opened it up in June of 2019. And by October of 2019, I had been betrayed, and the business had kind of gotten sold out from under me. And it was my money that had invested to make this business possible. So it was a really, really bad situation. I mean, devastating situation, because that was all I had to move forward, and it was doing well, and then it got taken from me because I am me, and I'm not this strong force. I'm more meek. People look at me and they know, like, oh, she's harmless, and so I'm kind of easy to take advantage of, unfortunately, because of that. And I think a lot of that comes back with the autism that I didn't know about either, but I had all kinds of awakenings. But so that happened, and I just had to really trust God in every bit of this, because I had no idea what to do. I was in just complete panic state. And so come January, things just kind of took a turn. The barbershop ended up being given right back to me, to where I became the sole owner of it. And so, like, that sounds amazing. And I was very happy that this is how this, turned around. But then by March, that was January of 2020 is when I got the barbershop back. And then March of 2020, that's when I turned 40. 2 weeks after I turned 40, the whole world shuts down. And understand that as I'm approaching 40, I am remembering that message that God gave me in 2014 that said, I'm about to do something big in your life. I'm about to just completely change your life in this positive way. And then now I'm taking inventory of what happened to my life since that message happened. And I'm not feeling very good about this. I'm kind of almost indignant at this point, I would say, is that I'm like, good. Like, I was in my dream home, getting to do my dream job, getting to just be with my kids. I had, full stability. And then I get betrayed. My health gets nearly taken from me. I mean, I lost my family. I lost my marriage. I lost my life. And then now I'm struggling, trying to, just make it on my own. I can't even get a job. And then I go and make this big leap, and then it gets, what? That doesn't feel like a good thing. It didn't feel like a good thing. I couldn't quite put all the pieces together yet in that moment. It was a big thing. It was absolutely big, but it didn't feel good. And so I get through, 2020. Of course, the barbershop has to close down for about 6 weeks when we're in the full lockdowns. And then it's not easy after that. I mean, we never recovered. We never recovered from where we were at before to, what happened after. It was always a struggle. And because it was such a huge struggle for everybody, you're dealing with very hard emotions, with the people around you. And it was hard to manage, just to be the leader when they knew I didn't know that industry. So, like, I knew business. I knew how to do business, but of course I didn't know, the industry like they would. And so there was always some friction there. I had a hard time, and not to mention autism. That's a social disorder. So, like, I was not really equipped to manage people in the way that I was trying to manage this group. And then I will add to that, it took me into a place, like, I was connected with people that I had never expected to be connected with. Like, I wouldn't have ever connected with these people outside of the barbershop. And I'm not saying that in judgment, and it probably does sound like that as I'm saying it. That's how closed my mind was. I wouldn't have probably given them the opportunity, is because I would have prejudged who they had been or how they were showing up or things like that. But because of this environment and just the type of people who would come into this type of work, it brought me into contact with people that I didn't fully expect to be close friends with. And I mean, I did become friends with many of these people, and I got to see different perspectives. And so I guess I'm kind of dancing around this because I'm not trying to offend people. I'm afraid with like the things that I'm saying, I'm going to end up offending people just as I'm telling my own story. And that's not what I'm trying to do. So a lot of the people who worked for me had past that were pretty tough. You know, they were previous addicts. Some of them even dealt drugs. Most of them had done time in jail or prison, had, you know, like, I was told very early that I wasn't probably able to do background checks or drug tests. And I was like, what? Like, if you want anybody to work for you, you can't do that. What? I had no idea. I had not been, like, I had such a sheltered existence to that point. And I say that, you know, just knowing I created that little bubble myself. I was only around Christians. I only interacted with Christians. I only interacted with people who lived like me or who lived like I thought you should live. And I did myself a disservice. And I'm saying that now because I got to see some other perspectives of life. And I got to understand, you know, the duality that is out there, and just that things are not really black and white, that someone is not fully good or fully bad. And that it just, I don't know, it helped me to see just different. It put me into contact with a whole different crowd though. And these were much harsher personalities than what I typically would deal with. I mean, you know, if you think about it, somebody who's probably spent time in prison, they don't take a lot of stuff off of nobody, right? And so they're pretty tough, and I'm just not. And so I struggled trying to lead this group. And it just continually got harder until, until June of 2021. But before I get too far there, I do want to add that I had also, you know, gotten into dating into all of this, you know, coming out of the marriage. And then, and I met a lot of the same individual. I'll say that in my dating experiences, I did seem to see some repeat patterns, some non-commitment people, avoidant type people. But I did end up getting in a relationship that I am still in. And it was really hard. And so I'm saying this now, and again, I am not trying to hurt people. This is literally just me sharing my story because it impacted me. And I need like that part to be understood, the impact to be understood. So he was very unconscious to his behaviors. He was very, very unconscious to his behaviors, and lots of wounding and triggering, and just, he was very, very unconscious to his behaviors. And it made it increasingly difficult for me. And like I went, oh gosh, at the beginning of 2019, I think I weighed like 140 maybe, to by the end of 2021, I barely 100 pounds. The stress that came on me through that period was unreal. And, you know, the relationship stress was a huge stress that he didn't see, but I was feeling the full impact of. It was so much that it caused me in January of 2021 to make a decision to start working on self-love, because that relationship did not make me feel like I was lovable at all. that relationship made me feel like there was something very wrong with me. And I didn't know how to get out of that. I didn't know how to get out of that mindset. So I did start working on self-love. And what that looked like for me is I started doing private videos for myself. I was using TikTok. I would just make a private video for myself, and I would tell myself, I love me, and I would pat myself up. I would tell myself good things, whatever. I would start treating myself like I was a real friend to myself. Other things that I started doing is like Valentine's Day. I bought me roses. I bought me a card. I bought me gifts. I took care of me. Like, I did the things for me that I wanted somebody else to do for me. I started doing it. And so that's really what self-love really, what the love that you're going to put out to somebody else, you start pouring it into you. And so I was getting very purposeful. And in May of 2021, like, I was dealing with all the stress from the barbershop, and, the stress of the relationship was just still a lot. And, this thing happened around that time frame that it triggered him. He accused me of cheating on him. And before I could even say anything, he said, because if you are, that's it. You're not worth fighting for. And I know he doesn't like me saying, though, telling this story. I know he doesn't, because it makes him feel really, because he has his own story about what he meant. But I'm just telling you the impact those words had on me, because those words were very, very important to the story. The person that I loved told me I was not worth fighting for. And so here I am. I'm looking in the mirror, and I just start telling myself, you're not worth fighting for. You're not worth fighting for. And I just have tears just start streaming. You're not worth fighting for. You're not worth fighting for. And then I started thinking about just everything else that was going on in my life. Just, like, why am I fighting so hard? What am I fighting for? What am I fighting for? I have no idea. And so, like, I went down so hard. And I was in bed for 3 days. I could not get out of bed. I was done. I didn't want to do it. Like, my health had already just deteriorated too. I was on so many medications. I was carrying around like this big gallon-sized Ziploc bag of my prescriptions. And it was like maybe 20 different pill bottles, like, that I was on at that time. Like, and my health was just awful. I was down to, I think, about 95 pounds, at that point. And, I kept having these cataplexy episodes, which that's part of narcolepsy, and I would just fall. And it looks like you're passing out, but you're completely conscious. And so I just had all of these different health things that were happening. Everything was just, and I didn't know what I was fighting for anymore. And then I have, like I said, the person that I love tells me I'm not worth fighting for. So it took me down, and I finally decided to get up. And I looked in the mirror and I told myself, even if nobody fights for me, I'm going to fight for me. I'm going to fight for me, because I am worth fighting for. I don't need anybody else to tell me that. I know that. I am worth fighting for. So I'm going to fight for me. So I made the decision then to pull myself back for a month from everything. Like, I pulled back from the barbershop. I even pulled back from my kids and my home. I just, like, completely retreated, hermit stage. But I just completely retreated to just take care of me. And so I did that for about a month. And I was sitting in my bedroom on July 1st of 2021. And I had YouTube on, just on my TV. I just had it playing. I wasn't watching anything. I was just letting it just one right after the other. And the first thing that kind of caught my attention was a tarot reading by MJ from Soulful Revolution. And I had seen her pop up on my page multiple times, but because of my belief in the Christianity, I wouldn't let myself actually look at it. But I would a few times find I was watching a little bit longer than what I probably should have. But I was hearing her talk about things from those cards that were like, well, wait, she's talking about Archangel Michael. What the world? How's he in there? Or the Pope. Like, she was talking about things church related, spiritual related. And Mother Mary, how did you get that? Like, so I remember just having like these weird, like, she'd catch me just enough that I would be like, is this different than what I know it to be? Or I thought it was. It was starting to kind of like pique my interest. That day, though, on July 1st of 2021, her message absolutely captured me. And I don't remember the specific words that she said, but she was speaking directly to my soul. Like, whatever that message was, and I could probably go back on her channel and find it, but it was so impactful to my actual experience. Like, it felt honestly like she literally came right out of the screen and she was talking only to me, telling me this is what you have to do. And, it was just that intense. And, so I'm paying attention. And when her reading went off, the next video up was a Ho'oponopono meditation. And I had never heard of that before either. But, I just let it play. And as this played, I went into this trance state. And I was basically, my body may have still been in that room, but my soul was gone. My awareness was gone. And in that moment, like, literally, it was like the whole everything of the universe just opened all up to me. And I just had this massive experience with God. That's the only way I know how to even explain it. Just this massive experience with God. And, the first thing that was kind of given to me in that was that I didn't have to give up Jesus. And I was so happy about that because I did not know how to do that. But I was kind of impressed that my understanding was going to have to change. And like, the way that it wasn't like it was a verbal conversation. It was just like a telepathic, almost, I would say, of just kind of knowing, okay, like I had the thought and then the answer. Like, it was just all kind of together. But it was just this massive experience that I just couldn't deny. And just the way that my whole body felt, I just couldn't deny. And so, I come back and I'm just like, oh. And I will say too, when it was finishing, I heard the trumpet sounds. I heard trumpets just ending it out. Just the most eerie thing. Just, because if you have Bible knowledge and you understand about the trumpet sounds, it was eerie. It was eerie. But I knew something major had just happened to me. And I started trying to talk about it. And the people around me thought I was crazy. But just 2 days later, I ended up having a spontaneous Kundalini awakening. And I'd never heard of that before either. And so with the Kundalini awakening, again, I go into this like trance state where, my body is here, but my awareness is now somewhere else. And that was more like a near-death experience, what you would hear other people talk about with near-death experiences. My near-death experience did not involve seeing a light. So I just need to say that. It just was peace. It was just, I was just awareness. It was beautiful, magical, but I didn't see a light. I didn't have like this whole story like that you typically hear. But in this moment, there was kind of a light experience. And so this one is where I kind of got more of the information. And I was shown a lot about my life, and I was kind of being told, like, okay, you were put here for a specific purpose and mission. And it's time for you to step up and do your mission. You're actually a little bit behind schedule. So, but I had a choice. I didn't have to step into the mission, but I was basically told that if you're not going to do the mission, then there's not really a purpose for you to be here anymore. And again, my health was to such a point where it was very likely that I was not going to be okay. I mean, I was really not okay. And so, I was just kind of given this heaviness of like the importance of stepping into my mission, that if I'm going to continue to be here, then I have a mission to complete. And so part of just the experience of that, there was a big rainbow just in front of us. And in the inside of the rainbow, it was just light. That's all you could see. It's just light shining out from under the rainbow. The rainbow was the outer, and then the light is just the full center. And I kind of knew that if I walked into that light, I was not coming back. Like I understood that much. And I was given like glimpses into the light. So like I would be able to kind of see, this is what happens to this person if you go into the light. This is what happens to this person if you go into the light. This is what happens to this person if you go into the light. So I was seeing the impact that my not doing my mission was going to have on people who meant a whole lot to me. But again, it was still, I had the free will to choose what I was going to choose, what I wanted to choose. And I was shown that I was going to be okay no matter what. So if I went into that light, I was kind of shown just this little bit of just heaven, just like I was going to be okay. I just knew that much. I was going to be okay. But then I was also given glimpses of what happens if I stay. I was going to be okay. So like, it was an amazing experience. It ended in because I do need to share this part, I guess. It ended in it wasn't a definite that I was going to be getting the opportunity to stay. There was a literal diagnosis that was given to me as this would be what would be the story of what would happen if you. So I did share this stuff. Because I wasn't sure if I was dying or not. The way that it ended was it could, because I had let things go way too far. I had let my health get just so far, off the path that it was supposed to be on. And I just, I made the decision, okay, well, I mean, like that, if that doesn't make me a believer, I don't know what would. But okay, I have work to do. So what is this work? And so I just started learning and developing my intuition. And the first thing that I did, and again, let me say this before I get to this, is that when I told people on July 3rd, when I told people what had happened to me, I was told you don't need to tell people that because you're going to be put in the crazy bin. And two, my mother actually came to my house and forced me to go to the hospital because what I had said was so, jarring to everyone. And so I was only in the ER for just a couple of hours. I was dismissed with a paper that said psychosis. I'm still in it if that's what it was. If it was just psychosis, I'm still there. Okay. So I'm living it out loud, but my life got better after that. So if that's what it had to happen, then I'm going to be okay about that. But yeah, so it was really, people were concerned for me. They were very concerned because they didn't understand. I sounded like a crazy person, but the thing, because I started in that day, I think it was in the spiritual awakening, I started talking about the 3D and the 5D. That's where I got that understanding. Never heard that before. And now then I'm like, that's real. That's something that, okay. And so, yeah, I send panic to everybody around me just because of just that instant shift and just them not understanding at all what I was going through. So I don't remember the other point I was going to get to before I stopped myself to come back there, but I started to, oh yeah, no, I do. Okay. So 2 weeks after that, I decided I was going to come off all of my medicines. I was given just kind of this, like, that was my next guidance that I was given, is you've got to stop your medicines. And so I talked to my doctors. They thought that I was crazy. They didn't. In fact, like I was going to a psychiatrist and he wouldn't see me without prescribing me medicine. So, okay, like, but I just kind of want to see, can I manage this? Can we just talk, like, have checkpoints of saying, okay, I made it this far and this is what I feel like. But no, if he wasn't going to prescribe me medicine, then he didn't need to see me. And so that was a little disappointing because I wasn't sure, that I was making the right decision. But this far out now, I absolutely made the right decision, because most people can't even tell that I ever had any of those health issues, and I don't deal with those health issues anymore. But that was, when I talk about the awakening, that was it. That was the moment, and it shifted my reality so much. And I mean, just that fast. And so I will say that all of my shift started the shifts around me too. And so while the relationship thing was, he's not unconscious about it anymore. So I do want to make sure that I'm being mindful of all the people who were connected to me through this. I helped bring them awareness too, that they didn't have either. I understood what it actually meant to be asleep, because I was asleep too before this. And so giving people the grace of being just where they're at, just, they don't have the awareness yet. They can't have it unless somebody gives it to them. And so thankfully he's grown and expanded, in that way too. And that's what's, helped us be able to stay together through this, because I'm going to tell you, a lot of people will go through spiritual awakenings and it will bust up all the relationships in your life. Because if that other person cannot grow and accept this with you, what are you going to do? You're living just completely different types of lives. And, are you going to continue to live a life that this person is condemning and try to be in a harmonious union with that? You can't. So yeah, so I mean, that's the story. That's the story. That's when it happened, the spiritual awakening. And that's showing you just kind of like the lead up to it, so that you can kind of see like what even your expectations might have been, like how things like that might happen, to help just kind of explain like how that happens. I feel like that we need to hear more people's story of this, because I do feel like more people are going to be waking up in just the next few years. We do have this big shift into Pisces. I think it's the North Node is moving into Pisces in January. That's going to cause everyone to get more focused on, their spiritual practices. And I do think there's going to be just waves and waves of awakenings, and they're going to need to know, because what I did after that is I started scouring the internet, just trying to find anybody who could tell me what was happening to me and that I wasn't crazy, that there were other people who were experiencing this and could explain it to me. And there were. I mean, it is out there. I found Christina Lopez, Heart Alchemist, I think is what she calls herself. I binged her for 2 weeks, going through every video she had on her channel. And she helped me understand so much about what it meant, what I had just gone through, what a spiritual awakening is, what the purpose of all of that. She helped me so much. And so that's part of what I'm hoping to be able to give back now, is that now that I'm kind of a little bit further in it and I'm understanding it and I'm seeing, how it impacted me, and I'm truly aligned with it, at this point. Now I feel like that's kind of part of my role, is to say, okay, like I tested the waters. It's fine. You can come, you can jump in, that kind of thing. Like I'm helping others, to come on, come on. It's not my goal, and not my job to convince anyone to come on this path. I am here for those that are already called to it. I'm here for those that are looking to, like, I don't know what to do. Where do I go? This is where I'm like, okay, I'm here. Come on. So I'm just a few steps ahead. I'm just a few steps ahead, and I can kind of help you see, this is what this path is going to be like, a little bit. And I can help you see, here's what the other side of that path is going to look like. Just come on. So if you have connected with this and you do feel like that you've been through your own awakening experience, maybe you're going through your own dark night of the soul and you wanted to learn more, you can connect with me. I have information about myself down in the description box below, and I'd love to hear from you in the comments, just what your awakening experience is and how you've connected with everything I've shared today. And other than that, I'm just going to leave it at that. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. If you found value in this video, I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe to this channel, hit the bell for notifications, and it will let you know every time I post a new video. I feel very discombobulated because this is so different from my typical content, and it's very off the cuff. So I hope I made sense. All right. Thank you guys. Bye.